husband banned me from having children because he claimed I was too lazy to care for a dog. He brought home a golden retriever named Benji and told me it was a test. He said if I could keep the animal alive for 1 year without an accident, he would agree to start a family. I thought he was being responsible. I thought he was protecting me, but I was so wrong. I am writing this with shaking hands, sitting in a house that feels like a mausoleum. Yesterday, I discovered the cameras Mark installed were not there to keep us safe. They were there to document my manufactured insanity. He wanted my $20 million trust fund, and he was willing to poison an innocent puppy to prove I was unfit to manage it. I watched the footage of the man I have slept next to for 5 years kicking the dog I love. Just to frame me for neglect, he turned my parents against me. He made me believe I was losing my mind. How do you mourn a marriage that was actually a crime scene? I feel so violated, so stupid, and so utterly alone. Please, I need someone to tell me I am going to survive this. What would you do if you found out your entire life was a lie? My name is Hannah van der Hoven, though for the last 3 years, the world has known me simply as Mrs. Mark Sterling. I am 30 years old, a number that hangs over my head like a guillotine blade in Greenwich, Connecticut, where a woman's worth is often measured by the pedigree of her children and the firmness of her skin. I am a trust fund baby, a term thrown around with derision by those who do not have money and with quiet understanding by those who do. My parents, titans of New York real estate, ensured I would never have to work a day in my life, provided I remained, in their words, is stable. That word, stable, has been the leash around my neck since childhood. I am not a career woman. I am a philanthropist on paper, a board member of the Greenwich Historical Society, and a homemaker in practice. But mostly, I am a project. I am the girl who trips over her own feet at debutante balls, the woman who loses her platinum credit card in the cushions of a sofa, the wife who forgets to turn off the oven. And then there is Mark, 32, a hedge fund analyst with a smile that could disarm a bomb squad. He is the self-made man to my inherited fortune, the steady hand to my trembling fingers. He is perfect, or rather, he was the perfect curator of my imperfections. Our home, a sprawling 1920s Georgian colonial on Round Hill Road, sits on 4 acres of manicured silence. It is a house designed for a large family, with 6 bedrooms that echo when you walk past them. It was supposed to be filled with laughter by now. I remember the night the silence became too loud. It was a Tuesday in late October. The New England autumn was dying outside, stripping the maples bare, leaving skeletal branches scratching against the window panes of the sunroom. I was sitting on the velvet chaise, staring at a negative pregnancy test. Another one. Mark walked in, loosening his silk tie. He looked like an advertisement for a luxury watch. Tired but expensive. He saw the plastic stick on the coffee table, right next to my half-empty glass of Pinot Grigio. Again? He asked softly. I do not understand, I whispered, feeling the familiar sting of tears. We have been trying for 2 years. Mark, maybe we need to see a specialist. Maybe in vitro fertilization is the answer. Mark sat down next to me. He did not hug me immediately. Instead, he picked up the wine glass I had left precariously close to the edge of the table and moved it to the center on a coaster. A small, corrective gesture. Hannah, he said, his voice a low, soothing baritone. We have talked about this. It is not about biology. It is about Saiyid Har Ling. 2 hash is greater than readiness. I am ready. protested, though my voice cracked. He looked at me then, really looked at me, with that gaze that made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. Are you, honey? Just this morning, you left the garage door wide open. Anyone could have walked in. Last week, you forgot to pay the landscapers, and they threatened to quit. A baby is not a hobby. Hannah, you cannot just put a baby down and forget where you left it. Inner monologue. His words did not sound cruel. They sounded like facts. That was Mark's talent. He could take my insecurities, wrap them in logic, and feed them back to me until I choked on them. I wanted to scream that forgetting a garage door opener does not mean I would be a bad mother, but the doubt was already there, planted deep in the soil of my mind. Was he right? Was I too broken to keep a human being alive? I can change, I pleaded, wiping my eyes. I will be more careful, I promise. Mark Sihil, the sound of a saint losing patience with a sinner. He took my hand, his thumb rubbing my knuckles. I know you want this. I want it too, but I have to protect you. Hannah, if you crash and burn with a child, Saoyuting Halin, 2# is greater than the courts. Your parents, Saoyuting Halin, 2# is greater than the trust fund stipulations. You know what your father is like. He let that hang in the air. The trust. The $20 million anvil hanging over our marriage. If I were deemed mentally unfit, control of the principal would bypass me and go to my legal guardian. Currently, that was Mark. I have a proposition, Mark said, his eyes brightening as if he had just solved a complex market equation. A test run. A test run? A dog, he said firmly. Not a purse dog, a real dog, a golden retriever. They require patience, a schedule, discipline, and constant care. If you can raise a puppy for 1 year, 1 year without any major incidents, without the chaos that usually follows you, then we start in vitro fertilization immediately. No questions asked. I looked at him. A dog. It felt like a consolation prize, but also a lifeline. A chance to prove to him and to myself that I was not just the clumsy, scatterbrained heiress everyone thought I was. Okay, I said. Let us do it. 3 days later, the atmosphere in the house changed. I came home from a charity luncheon to find 2 vans in the driveway. Men in blue jumpsuits were drilling into the eaves of our front porch. Mark, I called out, entering the foyer. He was standing in the living room, directing a technician who was mounting a sleek, black camera in the corner of the ceiling. What is this? I asked, dropping my keys on the console table. Mark turned, smiling, that dazzling smile. Preparation. Babe, if we are getting a puppy, we need security. Plus, it is a way for us to monitor the dog when we are not in the room. It is the new Nest system. Top of the line, 4K resolution, audio recording, cloud storage. I looked around. There was one in the hallway, one in the kitchen pointing at the back door, one in the living room, even one in the upstairs landing. It feels a bit. Saoyuting Haling, 2# is greater than excessive. Does it not? I asked, a cold shiver running down my spine. It feels like Big Brother. It is safety. Hannah, Mark said, his tone dipping slightly, losing its warmth. This neighborhood has had a string of break-ins, and with the dog coming, Saoyuting Haling, 2# is greater than. I just want you to be safe. Why? Does it bother you? He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. Inner monologue? There it was. The trap? If I said yes, it meant I had something to hide. If I said yes, I was being paranoid. Another symptom of my instability. He knew exactly how to corner me without ever raising a fist. No, I leaped. No, of course not. Thank you for taking care of us. Good. He kissed my forehead. Benji arrives tomorrow. Benji was a ball of golden fluff and boundless energy. He was 8 weeks old, with paws too big for his body and eyes that held nothing but unconditional love. When the breeder handed him to me, I felt a surge of warmth I had not felt in years. He did not care about my trust fund. He did not care that I forgot to turn off the lights. He just licked my chin and wagged his tail. He is perfect, I whispered, burying my face in his soft fur. Mark stood beside me, arms crossed, watching the interaction. He was not looking at the dog with affection. He was looking at it like an asset manager assessing a high-risk stock. Here are the rules, Mark said, handing me a laminated sheet of paper. I blinked. Laminated? Structure is key to success. Hannah, 6 anti-meridium feeding, 6:30 anti-meridium walk, 12 noon lunch. No table scraps. Absolutely no sleeping on the furniture. And under no circumstances is he allowed in the formal dining room or the master bedroom. The carpets in there are silk blends. They cost more than most people's cars. I took the sheet. It looked like a military schedule. I can do this, I said, mostly to myself. I hope so, Mark replied. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. I have synced the cameras to my phone. I will be checking in from the office to see how you two are getting along. Consider it. Saoyudzing Haling. 2 hash is greater than accountability. He walked over to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and dropped a single key inside. Then he locked the drawer and pocketed the master key. What was that? I asked. The treat cabinet, he said casually. We do not want you overfeeding him because you forgot you already gave him a snack. I will dispense the treats when I get home. It is better this way. He kissed me on the cheek. A dry, perfunctory peck. Do not let me down. Hannah, as he walked out the door, the heavy oak slamming shut with a finality that echoed through the house. I looked down at Benji. He looked up at me and yipped. I looked up at the corner of the kitchen ceiling. The small red light on the camera blinked once. Blink, blink. It was watching. He was watching. The house was quiet again, but it was not empty. I suddenly felt very small in my own kitchen. I knelt down on the cold marble floor and hugged the puppy tight. It is just you and me. Benji, I whispered, but I was wrong. It was not just us. Every move I made, every mistake I was bound to make, was going to be recorded in 4K resolution. The test had begun, and looking at the red eye of the camera, I had a sinking feeling that this was a test I was designed to fail. The first 2 weeks with Benji were a blur of sleepless nights and the sharp ammonia scent of enzymatic cleaners. I was operating on 4 hours of sleep, fueled by espresso and a desperate, clawing need to be perfect. Every morning, I woke up before the sun crested over the Connecticut hills, my internal clock set by the anxiety that tightened my chest the moment I opened my eyes. I moved through the house like a ghost, tiptoeing across the hardwood floors to avoid waking Mark. He needed his rest. He was the one managing millions of dollars in assets, the one keeping our world spinning. I was just the one trying to keep a 10-pound puppy alive. It started with the small things that made me question my own motor skills. On Tuesday morning, I went to feed Benji his breakfast. I reached for the large, airtight container of premium kibble that Mark had placed on the top shelf of the pantry. I remembered him putting it there. He said it was to keep the food fresh and away from ants. I stood on my toes, stretching my arm up to grab the handle as my fingers brushed the plastic. The lid, which should have been snapped shut, flew off. The container tipped. 3 pounds of dried dog food cascaded down on top of me like hail. It rattled against the floor, scattering under the refrigerator, into the hallway, and into the dining room. The noise was deafening in the morning silence, a chaotic clatter that sounded like a landslide. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. Inner monologue. I swear I closed that lid yesterday. I remember pressing down on the corners until I heard the snap. I am sure of it. Or am I? Did I get distracted? Did I just set it on top without locking it? God. Hannah. You cannot even open a box of food without causing a disaster. Hannah? Mark's voice drifted down from the top of the stairs. He sounded groggy, but there was an edge to it. I am sorry. I called back, my voice trembling. I dropped the food. Go back to sleep. I have got it. I scrambled to my knees, scooping the kibble up with my bare hands, throwing it back into the container. I felt the red light of the kitchen camera burning into the back of my neck. I knew he would watch the footage later. He would see me frantic, messy, covered in dust, scrambling on the floor like a maid. When Mark came down 20 minutes later, dressed impeccably in his charcoal suit, the floor was clean, but he stopped at the pantry door. He reached up, took the container down, and demonstrated the locking mechanism. Click, over, snap. It is not difficult. Hannah, he said, his voice terrifyingly gentle. You just have to pay attention. If Benji had eaten that much food off the floor, his stomach would have twisted. It could have killed him. I know, I whispered, staring at my feet. I thought it was closed. Thinking is not the same as knowing, he said. He patted my shoulder and walked out the door. The incident with the gate happened 3 days later. It was a beautiful afternoon, the kind that usually graces the covers of lifestyle magazines. The air was crisp, and the sky was a piercing, cloudless blue. I took Benji out into the backyard for his midday play session. Our yard was fenced in with 6-foot wrought iron, secure and impenetrable. I played fetch with him for 20 minutes, throwing his favorite squeaky hedgehog toy across the lawn. He was clumsy and adorable, tripping over his own ears. I felt a moment of genuine joy, a break in the clouds of my anxiety. Good boy, Benny, I laughed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my mother. I hesitated. I knew I should not take my eyes off the dog, but Mark had installed the automatic locking gate specifically for this reason. I had heard it click shut when we walked out. I was certain of it. I answered the phone and turned my back for 10 seconds to walk toward the patio table where I had left my water bottle. Hello, Mother, I said. Hannah, darling, are you coming to the gala on Saturday? You sound breathless, she said, her voice crisp and judgmental even over the cellular connection. I am just playing with the dog, I said. I turned back around. The yard was empty. My stomach dropped so fast it made me dizzy. The hedgehog toy lay abandoned on the grass. Benji? I called out. Silence. I ran to the side of the house where the driveway gate was located. It was wide open. The heavy iron gate, which was supposed to be magnetic and self-locking, was swinging gently in the wind. Inner monologue. No, 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 no. I checked it. I pulled on it before I let him off the leash. I remember the resistance of the metal. I remember the sound. How is it open? Did the mechanism fail? Or did I imagine checking it? Am I losing my mind? Mother, I have to go. I gasped, hanging up without waiting for a reply. I sprinted down the driveway, my loafers slapping against the asphalt. Benji, Benji. I reached the street. Round Hill Road was not a highway, but people drove fast here, their sports cars tearing around the winding curves. I looked left. I looked right. Nothing. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. If something happened to this dog, it was not just about the dog. It was the end of everything. It was proof that I was unfit. It was the end of the baby, the end of my marriage. I ran down the road, screaming his name until my throat felt raw. I was sweating, my hair sticking to my face, looking like a mad woman running through one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. A black Audi slowed down beside me. The window rolled down. It was Mark. He had come home early. "Get in," he said. His face was unreadable. "I cannot find him," I sobbed, scrambling into the passenger seat. The gate zou zien ling. Twee hekje is groter dan it was open. I do not know how. Mark did not yell. He did not slam the steering wheel. He just drove, scanning the tree line with methodical precision. "There," he said calmly, pointing a finger. Benji was sniffing a pile of leaves near the entrance to the country club, half a mile away. I leaped out of the car before it fully stopped, scooping the puppy up into my arms. I buried my face in his fur, weeping with relief. He wagged his tail, oblivious to the terror he had caused. The drive back to the house was silent. The silence was heavier than any scream could have been. When we got inside, Mark went to the control panel for the gate. He inspected it for a long moment. "The mechanism is fine, Hannah," he said, turning to look at me. "It works perfectly." But I checked it. I pleaded, clutching Benji to my chest. "I swear to you, Mark, I checked it." He walked over to me and placed his hands on my shoulders. He looked deep into my eyes, his expression full of pity. "Do you remember when you swore you turned off the curling iron, and we came home to a scorched vanity?" He asked softly. "Do you remember when you swore you mailed the property tax check, but we got a delinquency notice?" I bit my lip. Those things had happened. I could not deny them. "Your memory plays tricks on you when you are stressed," Mark said. "You think you did something because you intended to do it, but you did not do it. You left the gate unlatched. Hannah, you almost killed him." I looked down at the floor. The doubt was rooting itself deeper now. Maybe he was right. Maybe my brain was broken. "I am sorry," I whispered. "I will do better. Go upstairs and wash your face," Mark said, taking the dog from my arms. "You look hysterical. I will take care of Benji. Clearly, he needs a break from you." The final straw of the week came on Friday evening. We had been invited to a dinner party at the Abernathy estate, but Mark had suggested we stay in. He said I looked fragile and needed rest. He ordered sushi and opened a bottle of expensive sake. I was sitting on the sofa in the living room, trying to read a book, but the words were swimming before my eyes. Benji was pacing near the back door. "He needs to go out," I said, standing up. "Sit down," Mark said from the armchair where he was checking emails. "I took him out 20 minutes ago. He is fine. He is just seeking attention." "Are you sure?" I asked. "He looks restless." "Hannah, I know dogs," Mark said, not looking up from his phone. "If you cater to his every whim, he will never learn bladder control. Ignore him." I sat back down. I wanted to trust my instincts, but my instincts had left the gate open. My instincts had spilled the food. My instincts were suspect. Mark was the stable one. Mark was the one who remembered things. 5 minutes later, Benji squatted. It happened in slow motion. He hunched over on the antique Persian silk rug, a wedding gift from Mark's grandmother, valued at $40,000. No, I shrieked, diving for him, but it was too late. A dark, spreading stain bloomed on the intricate crimson pattern. Mark stood up slowly. He did not rush. He did not panic. He just looked at the stain, then at me. I told you, I stammered, tears springing to my eyes instantly. I told you he needed to go, and you sat there. Mark said. His voice was ice. You are the primary caregiver. Hannah, that is the agreement. You saw him pacing. You knew he needed to go. Why did you listen to me instead of doing your job? Are you that incapable of making a decision? Inner monologue. Wait. He told me to sit down. He told me to ignore him. He explicitly said not to take him out. Why is he twisting this? Or, Sao Yu Tsing Hao, Ling. 2 hash is greater than, did I mishear him? Did he say, take him out and I heard ignore him? No, that does not make sense. But the look on his face, Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than, he looks so disappointed, so tired of my incompetence. Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than I thought you said. Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than I trailed off. My voice weak, I said we are training him. Mark said, walking to the kitchen to get the cleaning supplies. He came back with a roll of paper towels and the enzyme spray. I reached out to help. Do not, he snapped, pulling the bottle away. You will just rub it in deeper. You will ruin the fibers. Just, Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling. Devey, stop. He knelt down and began to blot the stain. The rhythm of his hand was aggressive, sharp. I work 60 hours a week. He muttered, low enough that I had to strain to hear, but loud enough to be sure I caught every word. I pay for this house. I pay for this life. I ask for one thing, one simple thing, a companion. And instead, I come home to chaos. Gates left open, food on the floor, shit on the heirlooms. He stopped scrubbing and looked up at me. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth they held when we were dating. Maybe your mother was right, he said. The air left the room. What did she say? She said you were a child playing house. Mark said, she said you were not equipped for the real world. I defended you. Hannah, I told her she was wrong. But looking at this, Sao Yu Tsing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than. He gestured to the wet stain on the rug. I am starting to look like a fool for believing in you. I felt small, microscopic. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold my shattering pieces together. Please, Mark, I whispered, do not say that. I am going to sleep in the guest room tonight, he said, standing up and tossing the dirty paper towels onto the coffee table. I cannot be around this energy right now. It is suffocating. He walked away, leaving me alone in the vast, dim living room with the smell of dog waste and the crushing weight of my own failure. I looked at Benji. He was cowering under the sofa, looking as guilty as I felt. I am sorry, baby. I sobbed quietly. Above me, in the corner of the ceiling, the red light of the camera blinked. Blink, blink, recording my shame, documenting my downfall. I did not know it then, but the camera had not just recorded the accident. If I had the courage to check the footage, to really listen, I would have heard Mark whispering to the dog while I was in the bathroom earlier that evening. I would have heard him encouraging Benji to drink bowl after bowl of water, filling it up 3 times while I was not looking, but I did not check. I just sat there and let the guilt eat me alive. The atmosphere in the house had shifted from tense to suffocating. It was as if the very air had thinned, leaving me gasping for breath in rooms with 20-foot ceilings. Mark was distant, treating me with the polite, chilly courtesy one might extend to a clumsy employee they were planning to fire. He spent more time at the office, or so he said, leaving me alone with Benji and my growing paranoia. I tried harder. I became obsessive. I set alarms on my phone for everything. Feed dog, walk dog, check gate again. I started keeping a handwritten log of Benji's activities, documenting every meal and bathroom break like a nurse charting a patient in critical care. But no matter how vigilant I was, the accidents continued. A vase knocked over, a shoe chewed to shreds, and always Mark's sigh, that heavy, disappointed exhale that cut deeper than any scream. Then came Thursday, the day that broke me. It was raining, a cold, relentless downpour that battered the windows. Mark had come home early for lunch, which was unusual. He said he had forgotten a file, but he lingered in the kitchen while I prepared Benji's midday meal. "You look tired, Hannah," he said, leaning against the granite island, watching me measure the kibble. "I am fine," I said, my hand shaking slightly as I poured the food into the bowl. "Why do you not go lie down? I will take him out for his walk after he eats." "You take a nap?" The offer was so kind, so reminiscent of the man I married, that I nearly cried. "Really? You do not mind?" "Of course not. Go, rest." I went upstairs, grateful for the reprieve. I lay down on the bed, listening to the rain. I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, Mark was shaking my shoulder. His face was pale, his eyes wide with urgency. "Hannah, wake up. Something is wrong with Benji." I bolted upright, adrenaline flooding my system. What? What happened? "He is seizing. I think he ate something. We have to go. Now." I ran downstairs. Benji was on the kitchen floor, his body rigid, legs paddling the air, foam gathering at the corners of his mouth. It was a horrific sight. "Oh my God," I screamed, dropping to my knees. "Do not touch him." Mark barked. "We need to get him to the vet. Grab a towel." We wrapped the convulsing dog in a beach towel and ran to the car. Mark drove like a maniac, speeding through the rain-slicked streets of Greenwich. I sat in the back seat with Benji's head in my lap, sobbing, begging him to hold on. His breathing was ragged, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. We burst into the emergency veterinary clinic. The receptionist took one look at us and paged the doctor immediately. They rushed Benji onto a gurney and wheeled him into the back. Mark and I were left standing in the waiting room, dripping wet, my clothes stained with dog saliva. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. "He was fine. He was just eating lunch." Mark did not answer. He was pacing, running his hands through his hair. He looked distraught. 10 minutes later, Dr. Evans came out. He looked grim. "He is stable," the doctor said. We pumped his stomach and started him on intravenous fluids and activated charcoal. But it was close. "What was it?" Mark asked. "Poison?" "Theobromine poisoning," Dr. Evans said. "Chocolate. A significant amount of dark chocolate. Highly toxic to dogs." "Chocolate?" I gasped. We do not keep chocolate in the house. I know we do not. Mark is allergic to dairy, and I do not buy it. Dr. Evans looked at me, then at Mark. Well, he ingested it somehow. Mark turned to me slowly. His expression transformed. The worry vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated rage. The Halloween candy, he said softly. What? The candy you bought for the neighborhood kids. The premium, dark chocolate bars. You said you put them in the high cabinet. I did, I protested. I put them in the top cabinet above the fridge. Mark walked towards me, reaching into the pocket of my trench coat, the one I had thrown on in a hurry before leaving the house. He pulled something out. It was a crumpled wrapper. Lindt, 70% dark chocolate. The waiting room went silent. The receptionist stopped typing. A woman with a cat carrier stared at us. Mark, Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hashes greater than I whispered, staring at the wrapper. Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than I do not know how that got there. You do not know? Mark's voice rose, cracking with emotion. You do not know? You were snacking on it, were you not? You were eating it while you fed him, and you dropped it. Or maybe you just left it on the counter. Or did you give it to him? Did you feed our dog poison because you thought it was a treat? No, I cried, backing away. I swear, I did not. Stop lying, Mark shouted. He slammed his hand against the reception desk, making everyone jump. Stop lying. Hannah, I am sick of it. I am sick of the excuses. I am sick of the I forgots. He turned to the doctor, gesturing wildly at me. She is incompetent. I ask her to do one thing. One thing? Keep the dog alive. And she poisons him. He spun back to me, his face inches from mine. You almost killed him. Hannah, just like you would kill a baby. If we had a child, would you leave bleach out on the counter? Would you forget to strap them into the car seat? My God, you are a danger. You are a danger to everything you touch. Please. I sobbed, looking around at the strangers watching my humiliation. Please stop. Everyone is looking. Let them look. Mark yelled. Let them see the truth. I cannot protect you anymore. I cannot cover for you anymore. You are sick. Hannah, you need help. Real help. Not a husband. Not a baby. You need a doctor. He threw the wrapper at my feet. It fluttered to the floor. A damning piece of evidence I could not explain. Inner monologue. I looked at the wrapper. I recognized it. It was from the bag I bought, but I had not opened that bag. I had not touched it since I brought it home. How did the wrapper get in my pocket? I wore this coat yesterday. Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than it was empty. Did I eat it and forget? Did I have a blackout? Am I losing time? The way he is looking at me. Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than he hates me. He is right. I am a monster. I must be. There is no other explanation. Saoyuting Haoling. 2 hash is greater than I think I need to sit down. I murmured. The room was spinning. The fluorescent lights were too bright. Do not touch me. Mark hissed as I reached for his arm to steady myself. Stay away from me. And stay away from that dog. If you come near him again, I will file for a restraining order. I mean it. He turned his back on me and walked towards the treatment area door, leaving me standing alone in the center of the room, surrounded by the whispers of strangers who saw a wealthy, careless woman who had tried to kill her pet. I sank into a plastic chair, burying my face in my hands. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I was broken, irreparably, fundamentally broken. I sat in that waiting room for 2 hours while Mark stayed with Benji. When he finally emerged, he did not look at me. He paid the bill, $3,000, with a sharp snap of his credit card. He is staying overnight for observation, Mark said to the air. Not to me. I am going home to pack a bag. I am staying at a hotel tonight. I do not want to be in the same house as you. Mark, please, I begged, following him out to the parking lot. The rain was still falling. Let me explain. I do not know how the rapper got there. He spun around at his car door. The rapper was in your pocket. Hannah, in your pocket, unless the dog put it there to frame you. You did it. Stop gaslighting me. He got in the car and drove away, leaving me standing in the rain. I had to call an Uber to get home. The ride back to the empty house was a blur. I walked into the kitchen, the scene of the crime. The floor was still wet where I had spilled water in my panic. I looked up at the camera. Are you happy now? I whispered to the unblinking lens. You saw it all, did you not? You saw me fail. I walked over to the cabinet above the fridge. I needed to see the bag of candy. I needed to know how many were missing. I opened the cabinet door. The bag was there, unopened. I froze. I took the bag down. It was a factory-sealed bag of Lindt truffles. The seal was intact. I turned it over. No tears, no holes. Inner monologue. Wait, if this bag is sealed, Saoitsinghauling, 2 hash is greater than where did the chocolate come from? I only bought 1 bag. I distinctly remember buying 1 bag because Mark complained about the sugar content. If this bag is sealed, then the wrapper in my pocket, Saoitsinghauling, 2 hash is greater than it did not come from here. A cold chill, colder than the rain outside, started at the base of my spine. I put the bag down and ran to the pantry. I tore through the shelves. No other chocolate. I checked the trash can. Nothing. I went to the mudroom where Mark kept his gym bag. I did not know why. It was an instinct. A sudden, sharp prick of suspicion that pierced through the fog of my self-loathing. I unzipped the side pocket of his duffel bag. Inside, buried under a pair of sweaty socks, was a receipt from a convenience store in Stamford, dated today, 11:45 ante-meridium, just 15 minutes before he came home for lunch. Item 1. Hershey's dark chocolate bar, large, and next to the receipt, a small, empty wrapper. Not Lindt. Hershey's. My mind raced. The wrapper he pulled from my pocket was Lindt. He said it was the candy I bought, but the candy I bought was sealed. He had planted the Lindt wrapper on me. He had bought a different chocolate bar to feed the dog, then used a wrapper from a bar he must have bought separately to frame me. Why would he poison his own dog? Why would he hurt Benji just to hurt me? I backed away from the bag, my hands trembling violently. This was not carelessness. This was not an accident. This was a setup. I looked around the mudroom. The camera in the corner was pointed at the back door, but the bench where the bag sat was in a blind spot. He knew exactly where the cameras looked and where they did not. My legs gave out, and I slid down the wall to the floor. I was not crazy. I was not forgetful. I was not a monster. I was a victim, and the man I loved, the man I wanted to have children with, was the one holding the poison. I drove to my parents' house in a fugue state. The windshield wipers slashed back and forth, a hypnotic rhythm that failed to calm the chaotic drumming of my heart. I had the receipt from the gym bag tucked into my bra, pressing against my skin like a hot brand. It was my shield. It was my proof. My parents lived in Scarsdale. in a Tudor estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. It was the place where I had learned that affection was a transaction and silence was a virtue. I parked my car, a sensible sedan Mark had insisted I drive instead of my convertible, on the circular driveway. The lights in the library were on. I burst through the front double doors without knocking, startling the housekeeper. "Maria, Miss Hannah?" she gasped. "We were not expecting you." "Where are they?" I demanded, breathless, rain dripping from my hair onto the marble foyer. "In the library, Miss," Maria said, her eyes wide. "With Saoyuting Haoling, 2# is greater than they are on a call." I marched down the hallway, the heels of my boots clicking sharply on the wood. I pushed open the heavy mahogany doors. My mother, Eleanor, was seated in her wingback chair, holding a crystal tumbler of scotch. My father, Richard, was standing by the fireplace, his back to me. The room smelled of old leather and expensive tobacco. "He poisoned the dog," I blurted out before they could speak. "Mark poisoned Benji. I have proof." My mother looked up. Her face was a mask of perfectly applied foundation and indifference. She did not stand up to hug me. She did not look concerned for my wet, shivering state. She looked annoyed. "Hello, Hannah," she said, her voice dry. "We were just speaking with your husband. He is lying to you," I said, walking further into the room, my hands shaking as I reached into my dress to pull out the crumpled receipt. "Look at this. He bought chocolate, Hershey's chocolate. He planted a different wrapper on me to make me look crazy. He wants you to think I am unstable so he can get control of the trust." My father turned around slowly. He was a formidable man, tall and gray, with eyes that assessed value rather than character. He looked at the receipt in my hand, but he did not take it. "Mark told us you would say that," my father said. His voice was not angry. It was tired. It was the voice of a man dealing with an unruly investment. Saoyuting Haoling, 2# is greater than what?" I stammered. "He told us about your paranoia," my mother added, taking a sip of her drink. "He told us how you have been obsessing over the cameras, how you have been forgetting things, how you accused him of hurting the animal he bought for you." "I am not paranoid," I screamed, the sound raw in the quiet room. "I found this in his gym bag. Why would he buy chocolate? He is allergic to dairy." "Hannah, sit down," my father commanded. It was not a request. I sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching the receipt. "Mark sent us a video," my father said. He picked up the remote control and pointed it at the large flat-screen television mounted above the fireplace. "He thought it was important we see the extent of your Saoyuting Haoling. 2# is greater than difficulties. Saoyuting Haoling, 2# is greater than before you tried to spin a different narrative." The screen flickered to life. It was a montage, a seamlessly edited collection of my worst moments from the past 3 weeks. There was footage of me sleeping on the couch, mouth slightly open, while Benji barked incessantly at his empty bowl. The timestamp showed it was 2 in the afternoon. Inner monologue. "I remember that day. I had a migraine. Mark had told me to lay down. He said he had already fed the dog. Why was the bowl empty? Why did not the camera record Mark telling me to sleep?" The scene changed. It showed me in the kitchen, dropping the container of food. It showed me looking confused near the back gate. It showed me crying in the hallway, looking disheveled and frantic. Then there was audio. Mark's voice, recorded from the camera system, sounding patient and saintly. Hannah, honey, did you take your vitamins today? Followed by my voice, sounding shrill and defensive. Leave me alone. Mark, it was a masterclass in manipulation, taken out of context. I looked unhinged. I looked lazy, involatile, and incapable. Do you see? My mother asked softly. You look unwell, Hannah. He edited it, I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. He left out the parts where he gaslit me. He left out the parts where he opened the gate. You have to believe me. He is trying to steal the money. My father sighed and walked over to me. He took the receipt from my hand. I thought, for a fleeting second, that he was going to look at it, that he was going to see the date, the time, the item. Instead, he crumpled it up and tossed it into the fireplace. I watched in horror as the flames licked the paper, turning my only evidence into ash. Daddy, I gasped. Stop it, he snapped. Mark explained the chocolate. He bought it for his secretary. It was Secretary's Day. Hannah, you would know that if you ever worked a day in your life. That is a lie, I whispered. Secretary's Day is in April. It is November. It does not matter, my father said, looming over me. What matters is that you are making a scene. You are embarrassing this family. Again, he walked back to the fireplace and leaned against the mantel. We have a significant merger pending next month. The last thing we need is a public divorce scandal involving our daughter and a mental health crisis. It would spook the investors. So you want me to go back to him? I asked, my voice trembling with betrayal. You want me to go back to the man who killed my dog? The dog is alive, my mother interjected. Mark paid the bill. He saved the dog from your negligence. Mother, please, I begged, looking at her cold, perfect face. I am your daughter. I am telling you, I am afraid. I am afraid he is going to hurt me. My mother set her glass down. Mark is a good man. He is patient. He has put up with your moods, your lack of ambition, your Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling. 2# is greater than spells. He called us in tears. Hannah, he loves you. He just wants you to get better. We have made a decision, my father said. You are going back to Greenwich tonight. You are going to apologize to your husband. You are going to restart your therapy sessions. And if you mention divorce, or if you try to access the principal of your trust fund without Mark's signature, we will have you declared incompetent. The room spun. Incompetent. The legal death sentence. If they did that, I would lose everything. My freedom, my money, my voice. I would be a ward of the state. Or worse, a ward of Mark. You would do that to me? I whispered. We would do it to protect the family assets. My father said simply, and to protect you from yourself. I stood up. My legs felt like lead. I looked at the two people who had created me, and I realized I was entirely alone in the world. They did not see a daughter. They saw a liability. Fine, I said. My voice sounded dead. I will go back. The drive back to Greenwich was a funeral procession of one. I felt hollowed out. The fight had been kicked out of me, replaced by a cold, numbing dread. I had played my ace, the receipt, and they had burned it. I pulled into the driveway of our house. The lights were on. It looked warm and inviting. A perfect American home, a lie constructed of brick and mortar. I unlocked the front door. Mark? I called out softly. In the living room. A voice replied, but it was not Mark's voice. It was a woman's voice. I walked into the living room. Mark was sitting on the sofa, nursing a glass of bourbon. Sitting next to him, with her feet propped up on the coffee table, was Linda, Mark's mother. She was a small woman with hair dyed a harsh, unnatural shade of raven black and eyes that were like two chips of flint. She wore a leopard print blouse that was too tight and too much gold jewelry. She had always hated me. She called me the princess with a sneer that barely concealed her envy of my family's wealth. "Well, look who the cat dragged in," Linda said, taking a sip of what looked like Mark's bourbon. "We thought maybe you had run off to join the circus." "What is she doing here?" I asked, looking at Mark. Mark stood up. He did not look angry anymore. He looked triumphant. "I asked my mother to come stay for a while," Mark said smoothly, "since you are clearly struggling to manage the household and the dog, and since your parents agree you need supervision." Sao Yu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than Linda is here to help. "Help?" I repeated. "I do not need her help." "Oh, I think you do, honey," Linda said, standing up and walking over to me. She smelled of cheap perfume and stale smoke. She reached out and patted my cheek. Her hand was cold. "Look at this place. Dust on the mantels, dog hair on the sofa. And you, Sao Jing Hao Ling, 2 hash is greater than, you look like a wreck. It is a good thing I am here. Mark needs a woman around who knows how to take care of a man." The implication hung in the air. Gross and incestuous. "I want her out," I said, my voice shaking. "This is my house too." "Hannah," Mark said, stepping up beside his mother. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a united front of malice. "And right now, you are in no position to make demands. Your father and I had a very productive conversation. You are on probation. One more slip up, one more accident, and we initiate the competency hearings." I looked at them. Mark, the architect of my misery, and Linda, his willing executioner. "Where is Benji?" I asked. "He is in the basement," Linda said. "I put him in a crate. I do not like dogs running around the house. They are dirty. He stays down there until you learn how to control him. The basement is freezing." I protested. "He is a puppy. He has a coat," Mark said dismissively. "Go to bed." "Hannah, the guest room. Linda is taking the master bedroom for now. She has a bad back and needs the memory foam mattress." My mouth fell open. "You are kicking me out of my own bedroom? You lost the privilege of sharing a bed with me when you accused me of poisoning our dog." Mark said, "Now, go, before I change my mind and call the hospital." I looked at the camera in the corner of the living room. It was blinking. Inner monologue. "They are winning. They have taken my credibility, my family, my bedroom, and now my dog. They think they have broken me. They think I am going to curl up in the guest room and die." I turned and walked toward the stairs. I did not argue. I did not scream. I was too tired, and the trap was too tight. "Good night, princess," Linda called out after me, her laugh sounding like sandpaper on glass. I went into the guest room and locked the door. I sat on the cold sheets of the bed, staring at the wall. I was trapped. I was isolated. I was being watched. But as the shock began to wear off, a new feeling began to stir in the pit of my stomach. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was clarity. My parents had burned the receipt, but they could not burn my memory. I knew what I saw. I knew what Mark had done. And now I knew that I had no allies. No cavalry was coming over the hill to save me. If I wanted to survive this, if I wanted to save Benji and myself, I had to stop being Hannah the victim. I had to become something else. Something they would not see coming. I lay down, but I did not close my eyes. I listened to the sounds of Mark and Linda laughing downstairs. The sound of glasses clinking. They were celebrating. Let them celebrate, because tomorrow I would start acting, not the clumsy, forgetful wife they created, but the dutiful, broken, patient they wanted to see. I would play their game, and while they watched the performance, I would be watching them. The days bled into one another, a gray slurry of pill bottles and silent meals. It had been 3 weeks since my parents sent me back to Greenwich. 3 weeks since Linda had taken over my kitchen, my husband, and my life. I was existing, not living. Mark had insisted I see Dr. Arrington, a psychiatrist of his choosing, who had promptly prescribed a cocktail of sedatives to manage my hysteria. The pills made my head feel like it was stuffed with cotton. They dulled the sharp edges of my fear, but they also dulled my will to fight. I spent most of my time in the guest bedroom. It had become my cell. Downstairs, I could hear the murmur of Mark and Linda's voices, punctuated by the occasional clinking of silverware or the hum of the television. They were living in my house, eating my food, spending my money, while I withered away upstairs like a ghost haunting its own life. Benji was still in the basement. I was allowed to see him for 15 minutes a day, under supervision. He looked thinner. His coat, once glossy and golden, looked dull. He did not jump on me anymore. He just pressed his head against my leg and whimpered. Every time I looked at him, I saw a reflection of my own defeat. On a Tuesday evening, the darkness finally became too heavy to bear. It was raining for 3 days straight. The gloom outside matched the rot inside my chest. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, staring at the bottle of Xanax on the nightstand. Inner monologue. What is the point? They have one. My parents think I am crazy. My husband hates me. I am trapped in this house with a woman who looks at me like I am a stain on the carpet. If I disappear, everyone would be relieved. Mark could have the money. My parents could save face. Benji. Saoutsinghal Ling. 2 hash is greater than well. Maybe they would give him to a shelter where he would have a chance. I am just in the way. I poured the pills into my hand. They were small, white, innocent-looking ovals, 20 of them. Enough to sleep, enough to stop the noise, enough to stop the camera in the corner of the room from blinking its judgmental red eye at me. I went to the bathroom to get a glass of water. My hand was shaking so badly that water sloshed over the rim, wetting my wrist. I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark bruises of exhaustion. My hair was limp. I did not recognize the woman staring back. She looked already dead. I walked back into the bedroom, the pills cupped in my palm like precious stones. As I sat down, my foot kicked something under the bed. It rattled across the hardwood floor. I looked down. It was a black nylon strap with a small to square device attached to it. The GoPro. Mark had bought it the week Benji arrived. He had strapped it to the dog's collar for a day, saying he wanted to start a puppy vlog for YouTube to show what a happy family we were. He had used it for 2 days, then got bored and tossed it aside. I had not seen it since. I stared at it, a relic from a time when I still had hope. Inner monologue. One last look. I just want to see him happy one last time. Before the cages. Before the basement. Before me. I put the pills down on the nightstand. I picked up the camera. It was dusty. I did not know if it even had a battery left. I pulled my laptop out from under the bed. I had not opened it in weeks. Mark monitored the Wi-Fi usage, so I was afraid to use it. But it did not matter now. I was not going to be here tomorrow to hear him yell. I plugged the camera into the universal serial bus port. The computer chimed. Drive E. Connected. I opened the folder. There were 12 video files. Most were dated from the first week. I clicked on the first one. The screen filled with the shaky, low-angle perspective of a puppy. I saw blades of grass that looked like trees. I saw my own feet walking across the lawn. I heard my voice, high and happy, calling, "Come here, boy." Tears pricked my eyes. I looked so normal, so functional. I clicked through the next few. Benji chasing a ball. Benji sniffing a flower. It was heartbreakingly pure. Then I clicked on a file dated 2 weeks ago. The date stamp was from the day I left the gate open. The video started with the familiar, shaky view of the living room floor. Benji was walking towards the kitchen. Then Mark came into the frame. Or rather, Mark's legs. He was wearing his expensive Italian loafers. "Get over here, you little rat," Mark's voice said. The tone was not the gentle baritone he used with me. It was cold, venomous. The camera jerked violently as Mark grabbed Benji by the scruff of the neck. The puppy yelped. "Shut up," Mark hissed. I watched, hand over my mouth. As Mark carried the dog to the back door, the camera view spun. Mark opened the door. He walked to the gate. The gate was closed. I watched Mark's hand reach out. He undid the latch. He pushed the gate open. "Go on," Mark whispered. "Run. Get lost. Hopefully, a car hits you and saves me the trouble." He kicked the dog hard. The camera tumbled as Benji yelped and scrambled out onto the driveway. Running in terror, I froze. The air left my lungs. Inner monologue. I did not leave it open. I did not. He did it. He kicked him. He wanted him to die. My hands were trembling, but not from weakness anymore. I clicked the next video, dated 3 days ago, the day of the poisoning. The camera was pointing up from the floor of the mudroom. It must have fallen off or been left there. The angle was skewed, showing the bottom half of the room. Mark walked in. He was on the phone. "Yeah. Mom, I am at the vet now." "No, the mutt is still alive. Unfortunately." Pause. I know. I had to make it look convincing. I bought a Hershey bar and ate it, then rubbed some chocolate on his gums to make him sick. But I did not give him enough to kill him. Just enough to panic Hannah. Pause. Listen to me. Linda. We are close. She is cracking. Her parents are already disgusted with her. I just need one more big incident. Dr. Arrington says if she attempts self-harm, or if she has a public breakdown, we can file for emergency guardianship. He laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. $20 million. Mom, the trust unlocks fully if she is incapacitated. We can pay off the loan sharks in Vegas and still have enough to buy that condo in Miami you wanted and get rid of the debt on the firm. Pause. Do not worry about the brat. Once she is in the facility in Vermont, I will have power of attorney. We can keep her there for years. She is weak. She always has been. He hung up the phone. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a lint wrapper, the one he claimed was mine, and crumpled it up, stuffing it into his pocket. Then he walked out. The video ended. Silence. The only sound in the room was the whirring of the laptop fan and the blood rushing in my ears like a roaring river. I sat there for a long time. The image of the pills on the nightstand blurred in my peripheral vision. He was not just a bad husband. He was not just mean. He was a predator, a calculated, soulless sociopath who had systematically dismantled my sanity for money. He had tortured an innocent animal. He had gaslit me into believing I was losing my mind. He had turned my own parents against me. He planned to lock me away in a facility. For years, I felt something rising in my throat. Bile, acid, rage. I ran to the bathroom and retched into the toilet. I heaved until my stomach was empty, purging the weakness, purging the fear, purging the love I had ever felt for him. When I stood up and wiped my mouth, I looked in the mirror again. The woman staring back was still pale. She still had bruises under her eyes, but the eyes themselves had changed. The dull, glazed look of the sedated victim was gone. In its place was something cold, something sharp, something deadly. Inner monologue. He thinks I am weak. He thinks I am a project. He thinks he can throw me away like a broken toy. I walked back into the bedroom. I looked at the pile of white pills on the nightstand. The escape hatch. I swept them into my hand. I walked to the bathroom and flushed them down the toilet. I watched them swirl away, taking Hannah, the victim, with them. I went back to the laptop. I copied the files to a hidden folder. Then I copied them to a cloud drive Mark did not know about, my old college Dropbox account. Then I copied them to a universal serial bus drive I had in my jewelry box. I unplugged the GoPro and slid it back under the bed, exactly where I found it. I sat on the bed and smoothed my skirt. My hands were perfectly steady. For the first time in months, my mind was crystal clear. I was not going to die. That would be too easy for him. That would give him exactly what he wanted. No, I was going to live. I was going to be the perfect, obedient, crazy wife he wanted me to be. I was going to smile. I was going to take my fake medication. I was going to let Linda insult me. And while they planned their condo in Miami, I was going to plan their funeral, not a physical one. That was illegal. I was going to dismantle their lives with the same surgical precision they had used on mine. I was going to take everything, the money, the reputation, the freedom. I looked up at the blinking red light of the security camera in the corner. Inner monologue. Keep watching. Mark, you think you are the director of this movie, but you just lost control of the script. I lay down on the bed, pulled the covers up to my chin, and for the first time in 3 weeks, I slept. A deep, dreamless sleep. The sleep of a soldier the night before the war begins. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that had nothing to do with medication and everything to do with the role I had to play. I washed my face, leaving the dark circles under my eyes uncovered by concealer. I chose a beige cardigan that was 2 sizes too big, letting it swallow my frame to make me look smaller, frailer. I walked down the stairs slowly, counting the steps. 1, 2, 3. In the kitchen, the scene was domestic bliss. If your idea of bliss involved a hostile takeover, Linda was frying bacon, the grease popping onto my marble countertops. Mark was drinking an espresso, scrolling through his iPad. Good morning. Sleeping Beauty, Linda said without turning around. We thought you might sleep until noon. Depression is so exhausting, is it not? I did not answer. I just pulled out a chair and sat down, staring blankly at the placemat. Mark looked up. He scanned my face, looking for defiance. I gave him nothing, just a slack jaw and dull, heavy eyes. Here, he said, sliding a small paper cup across the island. Inside were 2 blue pills and 1 white one. Dr. Arrington upped the dosage. He wants you to stay calm. Inner monologue. They are increasing it. They want me comatose. If I actually swallowed these, I would be drooling on myself by lunchtime. He is trying to erase me completely. I picked up the pills with a trembling hand. I put them in my mouth. I took a large gulp of orange juice. I swallowed the juice, but I tucked the pills into the pocket of my cheek, between my gums and the soft tissue, just like I had practiced in the mirror for an hour last night. It tasted bitter, a chemical burn that began to seep into my mouth. Good girl, Mark said. He sounded like he was training a dog. The irony made my stomach churn. I am going to the library, I mumbled, my voice thick. I want to read. Just do not set anything on fire. Linda cackled. I walked out of the kitchen, keeping my head down. I went straight to the powder room down the hall. I locked the door, turned on the faucet to mask the sound, and spat the dissolving pills into the toilet. I flushed them away. Then, I waited. Mark left at 8:30. He kissed Linda goodbye, but he did not even look at me. Keep an eye on her. I heard him say, she is slippery. Do not worry. Linda replied, I will be right here, watching my shows. She is not going anywhere. Linda's definition of watching involved 3 glasses of Chardonnay and the Real Housewives marathon on the 60-inch television in the family room. By 10 o'clock, the volume was turned up loud enough to shake the walls, and I could hear her snoring during the commercial breaks. This was my window. I slipped out of the library. I took off my shoes so my socks would be silent on the hardwood floors. I moved past the family room. Linda was sprawled on the recliner, mouth open, a glass of wine precariously balanced on her stomach. I crept up the stairs to the 2nd floor, toward Mark's home office. He usually kept it locked, but since my breakdown, he had become arrogant. He thought I was too medicated to turn a doorknob, let alone pick a lock. I tried the handle. It turned. I slipped inside and closed the door softly behind me. The room smelled of cedar and Mark's expensive cologne. It was a shrine to his ego. Framed degrees, awards for Salesman of the Year, and photos of him shaking hands with minor politicians. I did not have much time. Linda usually woke up to refill her glass every 45 minutes. I went straight to his desk. It was a massive mahogany piece he had bought at an auction. I tried the drawers. Locked. Inner monologue. Think. Hannah. Where does he keep the key? He is a creature of habit. He is predictable. He hides things in places that make him feel clever. I looked at the bookshelf behind the desk. It was lined with first editions he never read. The Art of War. The Great Gatsby. I pulled out The Great Gatsby. Mark loved that book. He missed the point of it entirely, idolizing the wealth rather than seeing the tragedy. But he loved it. I shook the book. Nothing. I tried the hollowed-out globe in the corner. Just liquor. Then I looked at the pen holder on his desk. It was a heavy brass bust of Napoleon. Mark often fiddled with it when he was on the phone. I lifted it up. Underneath, taped to the felt bottom, was a small silver key. Got you, I whispered. I unlocked the bottom drawer of the desk. Inside, there were no neat files. It was a chaotic mess of papers, rubber-banded stacks of envelopes, and a black ledger. I pulled out the ledger first. I opened it to the current month. The numbers were written in Mark's sharp, angular handwriting. Income, $12,000. Salary. Expenses, $45,000. I blinked. The math did not work. How was he spending $45,000 a month? We lived well, but my trust fund covered the house maintenance and taxes. He only had to pay for his personal expenses. I flipped the pages back. October. Loss. $52,000. DraftKings. September, loss, $38,000. MGM Grand. August, loss, $100,000. Crypto margin call. My hand flew to my mouth. He was not just bad with money. He was a gambling addict. He was hemorrhaging cash. Inner monologue. This is why he needs the trust fund. He is not building a nest egg. He is drowning. He is in debt to people you do not want to be in debt to. If he does not get my 20 million, he is a dead man. I dug deeper into the drawer. I found a stack of letters with red stamps. Final notice. Collection agency. Legal action imminent. He was broke. The suits, the car, the dinners. It was all a facade. He was funding his lifestyle on credit cards he had opened in my name. I found 3 credit cards issued to Hannah Sterling that I had never seen before. They were maxed out. I took photos of everything with my phone, my hands moving with frantic precision. Then I saw the velvet folder at the very back of the drawer. I opened it. Inside was a purchase order from a high-end jeweler in Manhattan. Item: diamond tennis bracelet, 4 carats, platinum setting. Price: $28,000. Date: 3 days ago. 3 days ago, the day he told me we were broke and I needed to stop buying organic produce. But it was the shipping address that made my blood run cold. Shipped to Miss Sarah Jenkins, Apartment 4B, Bridgeport, Connecticut. Sarah Jenkins. I knew that name. She was the young woman Mark had interviewed last month for the position of household assistant. He had told me she was not qualified. He had told me she was too young. I pulled out another piece of paper from the folder. It was an email printout from sarahj@gmail.com to marksterling@finance.net. Subject: when, baby. I am tired of waiting in this dump. You said she would be in the loony bin by Christmas. I want to move into the big house. I want to decorate the nursery. You promised. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. The nursery. Inner monologue. He is not just stealing my money. He is replacing me. He is going to lock me away, use my money to pay his debts, and move his mistress into my home to raise the child he would not let me have. He is going to give her my life. A creak on the stairs. I froze. The sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Not Linda. Why was he home? It was only 11 o'clock. Linda? Mark's voice boomed from the foyer. Why is the front door unlocked? Huh. Linda's voice drifted up, groggy and confused. I must have forgotten. Where is Hannah? She is in the library, sleeping. I think I need to get a file from my office. I forgot the merger brief. I heard his footsteps hitting the stairs. Rapid, purposeful, panic, sharp and electric, shot through me. I looked at the mess on the desk, the ledger, the letters, the receipt. I shoved everything back into the drawer. I slammed it shut. I grabbed the key. I tried to tape it back to the bottom of the Napoleon bust, but the tape was not sticking. Footsteps on the landing. He was 10 feet away. I jammed the key into my bra. I placed the bust back on the desk. I looked around. There was no closet, no place to hide. The window. We were on the 2nd floor. Beneath the window was the roof of the sunroom. I threw the window open. The cold November air hit me like a slap. I climbed out onto the sill, ignoring the vertigo. I pulled the window shut behind me, just as the doorknob to the office began to turn. I scrambled across the shingles of the sunroom roof, slipping on the wet moss. I pressed myself flat against the siding of the house, right next to the chimney, praying he would not look out. Inside the office, I heard Mark moving around. I heard a drawer open. Inner monologue. Please do not notice the key is gone. Please do not notice the papers are out of order. Damn it, Mark muttered. My heart stopped. Where is that charger? He said. He was not looking for the ledger. He was looking for a phone charger. I lay there on the roof, shivering violently in my thin cardigan. Rain beginning to drizzle from the gray sky. I listened to him rummage around for 2 minutes that felt like 2 decades. Finally, I heard the door close. I heard his footsteps going back down the stairs. I got it, Mark yelled to Linda. I am heading back. Make sure she eats lunch. Yeah, Linda grumbled. I waited until I heard his car start and drive away. Then I waited another 5 minutes. I crawled back to the window. I pried it open with freezing fingers and tumbled back into the office. I put the key back under the bust, using a piece of gum I had been chewing to make it stick since the tape failed. I wiped the raindrops off the sill with my sleeve. I walked out of the office, down the stairs, and into the library. I sat in the chair I had vacated an hour ago. I picked up a book. When Linda shuffled in 10 minutes later to check on me, I was staring at the page. Still reading? She asked, scratching her stomach. You are boring. Hannah, really boring. I looked up at her. I allowed a small, vacant smile to touch my lips. I am just resting, I said softly, but under the oversized cardigan, my heart was beating a war drum. I had the evidence. I knew about the debt. I knew about Sarah. I knew the timeline. Christmas. He wanted me gone by Christmas. That gave me 4 weeks. But I was not going to wait 4 weeks. Mark wanted a big event. He wanted a finale. I would give him one. I reached into my pocket and touched the cold glass screen of my phone. The pictures were there. The ammunition was loaded. Now, I just needed the stage. The invitation was cream-colored cardstock with gold embossed lettering, heavy enough to kill a large insect. Mark placed it on the dining table between us like a treaty or a declaration of war. It was Tuesday evening. Linda was picking her teeth with a toothpick across from me, and Mark was pouring a vintage Cabernet that he had undoubtedly purchased on credit. I picked up the card, the sterling 5th wedding anniversary, a celebration of love and resilience. I stared at the word resilience. It was a choice. It was a signal. I took the liberty of ordering them. Mark said, his voice dripping with faux consideration. I know you have been overwhelmed lately, Hannah, and I did not want to burden you with the details, but I think it is time we reintroduce you to society. Everyone has been asking why you have vanished. A party? I asked, keeping my voice small and uncertain. Do you think I am ready? Mark, there will be so many people. That is exactly the point. Linda Shemedin, flicking a piece of spinach from her tooth onto her plate. If you hide away forever, people will talk. They will say you are crazy. Mark is trying to save your reputation. Princess, you should be grateful. I looked at Mark. His eyes were shining with excitement. This was not about my reputation. This was the final act of his play. He invited the judges, the doctors, the investors, and my parents. He wanted them all in one room to witness the unstable wife crumble under pressure. He would likely stage a trigger, a loud noise, a missing item, something to make me scream or cry, and then he would look at the crowd with sad, resigned eyes, and the path to the sanitarium would be paved with their sympathy. Inner monologue. He wants a stage for my execution. He wants to publicly certify my insanity so that when he files the papers next week, no one will bat an eye. He thinks he is setting a trap. He has no idea he is digging his own grave. You are right, I said softly, forcing a weak smile. I want to make you proud. Mark, I want to show everyone I am getting better. Mark reached across the table and squeezed my hand. His palm was damp. That is my girl. It will be a night to remember. I promise. The preparations began the next day. A team of caterers, florists, and technicians descended on our home. The house buzzed with the chaotic energy of a hive. I played my part perfectly. I wandered through the rooms in my oversized cardigan, clutching a mug of herbal tea, looking vague and medicated. When the florist asked me about the centerpieces, I deferred to Linda. Oh, ask my mother-in-law, I whispered, looking at the floor. She makes all the decisions now. I get confused too easily. Linda preened under the attention, barking orders at the staff and ordering the most expensive orchids available. She was enjoying being the mistress of the manor. But while Linda was busy terrorizing the caterers about the shrimp cocktail, I was watching the audiovisual crew setting up in the grand ballroom. Mark had rented a massive screen, 100 inches diagonally, to display a slideshow of our happy memories. It was the centerpiece of his manipulation. Images of us smiling in Aspen, in Cavo, in Paris, all to contrast with the broken woman standing before them. The lead technician was a guy named Mike. He wore a black t-shirt and looked bored. I waited until Mark went to the wine cellar to select the champagne. I walked up to the audiovisual booth in the corner of the ballroom. I did not walk like the medicated wife. I walked with purpose. Excuse me, I said. Mike looked up from his soundboard. Yeah? You need something. Madam, you are running the video presentation for tomorrow night, correct? Yes. Madam, Mr. Sterling gave me the file this morning. Mark and Hannah Love Story .mp4. It is all queued up. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan. I pulled out a thick, white envelope. Inside was $2,000 in cash. Money I had slowly siphoned from the grocery budget and pawned jewelry over the last 6 months. Hidden inside a hollowed-out book in the library, I placed the envelope on the mixing board. Mike looked at the envelope, then at me. He saw the thickness of it. What is this? He asked, his voice lowering. A tip, I said, my voice steady and clear. For superior service, I pulled a small, silver, universal serial bus drive from my other pocket. Mr. Sterling made a mistake. I said, he gave you the old draft of the video. He forgot to include the special tribute to my parents and the new footage from our anniversary trip. He has been so stressed lately. I wanted to surprise him by fixing it. Mike hesitated. He was pretty specific about the file. Madam, I know, I said, leaning in closer. But this is my anniversary too. And inside that envelope is $2,000 that says this version is much better. It starts exactly the same. The first 2 minutes are identical. He will not know the difference until it is too late to stop it. I pushed the envelope closer to his hand. And if anyone asks, I was never here. You just played the file on the desktop. Mike looked at the money. He looked at the universal serial bus drive. He looked at the bored caterers across the room who were paying no attention. He picked up the envelope and slid it into his pocket. What file name am I looking for? He asked. It is named exactly the same. I said, Mark and Hannah, Love Story .mp4. He took the universal serial bus drive and plugged it into his laptop. He dragged the file over, replacing the one Mark had given him. You got it, Mike said. When do I hit play? When I tap the microphone, I said. Mark is going to make a speech. Then I will go up to say a few words. When I tap the microphone twice, you play it. And Mike? Yeah? Once it starts, do not stop it. No matter who yells at you, do not cut the feed until the video ends. Do we have a deal? Mike grinned. It was the grin of a man who realized this was going to be an interesting gig. For $2,000, lady, I would play a heavy metal concert. Do not worry. I will lock the console. Thank you, I said. I turned and walked away just as Mark entered the room carrying a crate of Dom Perignon. Everything good here? Mark asked, looking at Mike. All set. Mr. Sterling, Mike said, not missing a beat. Just checking the sound levels. I offered Mark a vacuous smile. The screen is so big. Mark, it is going to be beautiful. It will be, Mark said, patting my shoulder. Go rest now. Hannah, you have a big day tomorrow. That night, I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but my mind was a whirlwind of anticipation. The video on that drive was a masterpiece. I had spent 3 nights editing it in secret, using an old laptop I found in the attic that Mark had forgotten about. I had stitched together the footage from the GoPro, the kick, the verbal abuse, the confession about the debt. I had added screenshots of the emails from Sarah Jenkins. I had added photos of the maxed out credit card statements. It was a nuclear bomb wrapped in a digital file, but I was not done. I picked up my phone. I had one more message to send. I opened a burner email account I had created. I typed in a single address, sarahj@gmail.com. Subject, he is going to leave you. Body, you think you are the only one. He bought a bracelet for someone else yesterday. Come to the Sterling estate tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. The back gate will be open. See for yourself who he is really celebrating with. It was a lie. He had not bought another bracelet, but a woman like Sarah, who was waiting for a married man to leave his wife, was already paranoid. She would come. She would not be able to resist. I hit send. I deleted the account. I closed my eyes. Inner monologue. Tomorrow. The curtain rises. Mark thinks he is the director. He thinks he wrote the script. He thinks I am just a prop. But he forgot the most important rule of theater. Never underestimate the woman with nothing left to lose. I pulled the covers up. For the first time in a month, I did not check the door lock. I did not care if they came in. I did not care if they watched me on the camera. Let them watch. Tomorrow, the whole world would be watching. The evening of the anniversary party arrived, wrapped in a velvet cloak of luxury and deceit. The Sterling estate glittered like a jewel box. Valets parked Bentleys and Maseratis along the circular driveway. The air smelled of expensive perfume, roasting lamb, and the crisp, cold scent of impending winter. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the guest room. Linda had selected my dress, a pale gray silk gown that washed me out, making me look ghost-like and fragile. It was intentional. I was supposed to be the tragic figure, the wilting flower in need of a gardener's care. I applied my makeup, not the minimal, sickly look Linda expected. I added a sharp wing of black eyeliner and a coat of blood-red lipstick. I brushed my hair until it shone, pinning it back to reveal the sharp line of my jaw. When I walked downstairs, the transformation was subtle but undeniable. I was not slumping. I was not trembling. Mark met me at the bottom of the staircase. He was wearing a midnight blue tuxedo, looking every inch the devoted husband. He frowned when he saw the lipstick. I thought we agreed on a more saluting, 2 hash is greater than natural look. He whispered, gripping my elbow tight enough to bruise. You look aggressive. It is a party. Mark? I said, my voice cool and even. I want to look alive for the guests. Before he could argue, the doorbell rang. The first wave of guests poured in. The next hour was a blur of forced smiles and hollow pleasantries. I circulated the room with a glass of sparkling water in my hand, playing the role of the recovering invalid perfectly. Oh, Hannah, darling, you look Xiao Jing Hao Ling. 2 is greater than rested, Mrs. von der Woodsen said, her eyes scanning me for cracks. Thank you, Beatrice. Mark has been taking such wonderful care of me, I replied, ensuring my voice carried just enough of a tremor to be convincing. My parents arrived at 8 o'clock. My father looked regal and bored. My mother looked critical. They barely acknowledged me, gravitating immediately toward Mark, who was holding court near the bar. I saw Mark whisper something to my father, gesturing toward me with a sad shake of his head. My father patted Mark's shoulder sympathetically. Inner monologue. Look at them, conspiring, consoling the wolf for having to eat the sheep. Enjoy your champagne, Father. It is the last peaceful drink you will ever have in this town. At 8:30, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the small stage that had been erected in front of the massive screen. Mark stepped up to the microphone. The room fell silent. Thank you all for coming, Mark began, his voice thick with emotion. 5 years. It feels like a lifetime. We have had our highs, and as many of you know, we have had our recent lows. He paused, looking down at the floor, then up at me with eyes full of staged adoration. My wife, Hannah, has been through a tremendous struggle these past few months. Her mental health has been Xiao Jing Hao Ling, 2 dièse est supérieur à fragile. But I promised her, on our wedding day, in sickness and in health, and I intend to keep that promise, no matter how difficult the road ahead becomes. Tonight is about resilience. It is about love that endures the darkest storms. The crowd applauded politely. Some women dabbed their eyes with handkerchiefs. Linda, standing in the front row, nodded solemnly, looking like a grieving mother. Hannah, Mark said, extending a hand toward me. Would you like to say a few words? This was the trap. He expected me to come up, stammer, cry, and perhaps break down, solidifying his narrative. I walked toward the stage. My steps were steady. The silk of my dress rustled like a whisper. I took Mark's hand, felt the cold sweat on his palm, and stepped up to the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. My parents, the neighbors, the doctors, the elite of Greenwich. Thank you, Mark, I said. My voice was clear, amplified by the speakers, devoid of any tremor. For those kind words, you are right. It has been a difficult few months. I have been confused. I have been lost. I have questioned my own reality. I paused. The room was dead silent. Mark shifted uncomfortably beside me. But clarity, I continued, is a funny thing. It often comes when you least expect it. Sometimes it comes from a pill bottle. Sometimes it comes from a conversation you were not meant to hear. And sometimes, Xiao Jing Hao Ling, R. Jing Hao Da Yu. I looked directly at Mark. His smile faltered. Xiao Jing Hao Ling, 2 is greater than sometimes. It comes from the perspective of the one soul in this house who cannot lie. I tapped the microphone twice. Tap, tap. Behind me, the massive screen flickered to life. The first few seconds were the standard montage Mark had prepared. Photos of our wedding, smiling on a beach. The crowd smiled. Mark relaxed slightly, thinking I was just being dramatic. Then, the music cut out abruptly. The screen went black for a second. Then, a new video began. The angle was low, shaky. It was the GoPro footage. The image of Mark's Italian loafers filled the screen. Larger than life. Get over here, you little rat. Mark's voice boomed through the ballroom speakers. Distorted but unmistakable, a collective gasp rippled through the room. On screen, Mark's hand grabbed the puppy. The kick, the sound of the dog yelping. Mark froze. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Turn it off, he hissed at me. What is this? Turn it off. I did not move. I stood like a statue. The video cut to the mudroom scene. Mark on the phone with his mother. I bought a Hershey bar and ate it. Saoyu Jinghao, Ling. 2 hashes greater than just enough to panic Hannah. The crowd began to murmur. My mother dropped her champagne flute. It shattered on the floor, but no one looked down. She is cracking. Saoyu Jinghao Ling. 2 hashes greater than $20 million. Mom, Saoyu Jinghao Ling. 2 hashes greater than. The trust unlocks fully if she is incapacitated. Mark lunged toward the audio-visual booth. Cut the feed. Mike, cut the damn feed. But Mike was gone. The booth was empty. The laptop was locked. The video continued. Now, it was not just video. It was documents. Huge. High-resolution scans of the gambling debts. The foreclosure notices. The emails from Sarah Jenkins. Baby, I want to move into the big house. Saoyu Jinghao Ling. 2 hash is greater than you promised. Lies, Mark screamed, turning to face the crowd, his face purple with rage. This is deep fake. This is artificial intelligence. She is crazy. I told you she was crazy. But then, a voice rang out from the back of the ballroom. A shrill, piercing voice. You promised me the nursery. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Standing in the doorway was a young woman with bleached blonde hair, wearing a dress that was far too short for a Greenwich gala. Sarah Jenkins. She was staring at the screen, then at Mark, tears streaming down her face. You said you bought me a bracelet, Sarah screamed, marching into the room. You said she was going to the loony bin by Christmas. Mark looked from the screen to his mistress, then to his mother. Linda was shrinking back into the shadows, trying to disappear. I stepped back up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I said calmly, I present to you the devoted husband, the man who poisoned a puppy, gaslit his wife, and indebted himself to loan sharks, all for a trust fund he did not earn. Mark turned on me. The mask was gone completely now. There was no suave banker left, only a cornered, feral animal. You bitch, he snarled. You ungrateful, manipulative bitch. He lunged at me. It happened in slow motion, his hand raised, fingers curled into a claw. The crowd screamed. My father started to run toward the stage, but he was too far away. Suddenly, a blur of golden fur shot out from under the heavy velvet curtains behind the stage. I had let him out before I came downstairs. I had gone to the basement and opened the crate. I had whispered to him to wait, to protect Benji, now 4 months old and 40 pounds of muscle and loyalty, hit Mark squarely in the chest. Mark went down with a thud. The wind knocked out of him. Benji did not maul him. He stood over him, teeth bared, letting out a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the microphone stand. Mark scrambled backward on the floor, terrified. Get him off me. He is vicious. He is not vicious. Mark, I said, looking down at him. He just knows a predator when he sees one. Sirens began to wail in the distance. I had called them 10 minutes ago, reporting a fraudulent scheme and animal cruelty. 2 police officers entered the ballroom, pushing through the stunned guests. Mark Sterling? One officer asked. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding financial fraud and animal abuse. And madam, he nodded toward Linda, who was trying to sneak out the side door. Linda, Sterling, you too. As the officers hauled Mark to his feet, he looked at my parents. Richard, Eleanor, do something. She set me up. My father stepped forward. He looked at the gambling debts still frozen on the giant screen. He looked at Sarah Jenkins sobbing near the buffet. He looked at his daughter, standing tall on the stage with a protective dog at her feet. My father walked up to Mark. He did not offer help. He did not offer a lawyer. He slapped Mark across the face. A hard, stinging slap that echoed in the silent room. You are fired, my father said, and if you ever say my daughter's name again, I will bury you so deep under legal fees, you will never see the sun. Mark was dragged out, screaming obscenities. Linda followed in cuffs, weeping theatrically about her high blood pressure. The room was quiet again. I looked at the crowd. They were staring at me with a mix of horror and newfound respect. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around Benji's neck. He licked my face, his tail thumping against the stage floor. It is over, boy, I whispered. We are safe. I stood up and looked at my mother. She was pale, clutching her pearls. She took a step toward me. Hannah, Saoyudzing howling, 2 hashes greater than she began. I held up a hand. Do not, I said, just Saoyudzing howling, 2 hash is greater than do not. I walked off the stage, Benji trotting by my side. I walked through the crowd, head held high, and out the front door into the cold, clean night air. I did not know where I was going, but for the first time in my life, I was driving the car. The silence that follows a hurricane is not peaceful. It is heavy. It is a vacuum where the air pressure is too low, making your ears pop and your head ache. It had been 7 days since the anniversary party. 7 days since the police cars flashed their red and blue lights against the white columns of my home. 7 days since Mark was led away in handcuffs. Screaming that I was the insane one, I sat in the middle of the living room floor. The Persian rug, the one Benji had soiled weeks ago, was gone. I had rolled it up and thrown it into a dumpster. I did not care that it was worth $40,000. It smelled of Mark's disdain. Around me lay cardboard boxes. I was not moving out. I was purging. I picked up a framed photograph of us from our honeymoon in Bora Bora. We looked so happy. I looked at my own eyes in the photo. Was I happy then? Or was I just relieved that someone had finally chosen me? I looked at Mark's hand resting on my shoulder. In the photo, it looked protective. Now, I saw the weight of it, the possession. I smashed the glass against the side of the fireplace. It shattered with a satisfying crunch. I threw the frame into the burn box. Inner monologue. They say revenge is sweet. They are lying. Revenge is exhausting. The adrenaline of the gala has faded, leaving behind a cold, gray reality. I won, but I am sitting in the wreckage of my 30s, divorced, traumatized, and alone in a 6-bedroom house. The doorbell rang. I knew who it was. I had been ignoring their calls for a week. I walked to the door, Benji trotting faithfully at my heel. He was the only male in my life I trusted now. I opened the heavy oak door. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, stood on the porch. My mother was holding a Tupperware container, a ludicrous peace offering from a woman who had never cooked a meal in her life. My father held a briefcase. Hannah, my mother said, her voice tight. We have been worried sick. You have not answered the phone. I have been busy, I said, blocking the doorway, meeting with lawyers, cleaning up the mess. Can we come in? My father asked. He did not look at me. He looked past me, assessing the state of the foyer. I stepped aside. Briefly, they walked into the living room and stopped when they saw the boxes and the shattered glass in the fireplace. My mother wrinkled her nose. Oh, Hannah, she sighed. Must you be so dramatic? The neighbors are already talking enough. Let them talk, I said, sitting on the sofa but not offering them a seat. What do you want? My father set his briefcase on the coffee table. He clicked the latches open. I have spoken to the district attorney. He said, Mark is being held without bail. The flight risk is too high given his connections and the Saootsinghao 2# is greater than erratic nature of his debts. The fraud charges are substantial. The animal cruelty charges are sticking, thanks to your video. Good, I said. However, my father continued, pulling out a file. We need to discuss damage control. The Vanderhoven name has been dragged through the mud. The tabloids are calling you the Gone Girl of Greenwich. We need to issue a statement, something dignified, perhaps stating that you were unaware of his activities and are asking for privacy to heal. I do not care about the name. Daddy, I said quietly, of course you care. He snapped, his patience fraying. That name pays for this house. That name pays for the food in your pantry. Mark tried to have me committed, I said, looking him in the eye. And you helped him. The room went deadly silent. My mother placed the Tupperware on a side table as if it were a bomb. We did not know, she whispered. He was so convincing. Hannah, you have always been. Saootsinghao 2# is greater than sensitive. We thought we were doing what was best for you. Best for me, I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. You burned the receipt. I brought you proof. And you burned it because you did not want a scandal. You would rather have a daughter in an asylum than a daughter in divorce court. My father stiffened. That is not fair. It is the truth, I said. You raised me to be this way. You raised me to be helpless, to rely on men, to handle the money, the decisions, the life. Mark did not break me. Father, he just walked through the door you left unlocked. Inner monologue. I see them now. Really see them. They are not monsters. They are just small, hollow people wrapped in expensive clothes. They do not know how to love. They only know how to manage assets. And I was just an asset that was underperforming. I am changing the terms of the trust, I said firmly. My father blinked. Excuse me? I met with Mr. Henderson this morning. Since I am the victim of criminal fraud by a trustee, I have grounds to petition for immediate control of the principal. I am taking the money. Father, all of it. And I am removing you as the secondary overseer. You cannot do that. My father sputtered, his face turning red. You are not capable of managing $20 million. Watch me, I said, and if you can test it, I will release the rest of the audio from the GoPro. The part where Mark talks about how much you hated him but tolerated him because he promised to merge his firm with yours. I think the board of directors would find that interesting. It was a bluff. There was no such audio. But my father did not know that. Fear flickered in his eyes. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that the sensitive girl he raised had died in that marriage. Fine, he spat, closing his briefcase. Do what you want, but do not come crying to us when you lose it all. I will not, I said. They left 5 minutes later. There were no hugs, no apologies that meant anything, just the clicking of the door latch. I was an orphan now, not by death, but by choice. I walked into the kitchen. The house felt huge, empty. I looked up at the corner of the ceiling. The camera was still there. I went to the garage and got the stepladder. I grabbed a hammer. I climbed up. I did not bother unscrewing the mount. I jammed the claw of the hammer behind the plastic casing and yanked. With a loud crack, the camera ripped away from the drywall, pulling a chunk of plaster with it. Dust rained down on my face. I climbed down and threw the device into the trash compactor. I went to the next room, and the next, for an hour. The only sound in the house was the screech of tearing metal and the thud of plastic hitting the bottom of the bin. When I was done, the house was pockmarked with holes. It looked wounded, but it was blind. No one was watching. I sat on the kitchen floor, covered in drywall dust, my hands raw. Benji came over and licked the dust off my cheek. I buried my face in his fur, and finally, for the first time since the gala, I cried. I did not cry for Mark. I did not cry for my parents. I cried for the girl I used to be. The girl who wanted a baby so badly, she ignored the red flags. The girl who thought love meant obedience. She was gone, and I missed her ignorance. I missed the ease of believing the world was safe. Now I knew better. The world was full of wolves in designer suits, but as I sat there, feeling the steady beat of the dog's heart against my chest, I realized something else. I was a wolf now too. I stood up. I wiped my face. There was a lot of work to do. I had to sell the house. I could not live here anymore. Too many ghosts. I had to find a forensic accountant to track down where Mark had hidden the rest of the money. I had to testify at the grand jury hearing next week. But first, I had to feed the dog. I walked to the pantry. I reached for the food container. I checked the lid. Click. Snap. I smiled. A small, sad, genuine smile. Dinner time. Benji. I said. The house was quiet, but it was my silence, and I would fill it with whatever I wanted. 6 months later, the Connecticut coastline in May is a watercolor painting come to life. The sky is a washed-out blue. The ocean is a slate gray, and the beach grass is a vibrant, defiant green. I stood on the deck of my new home. It was not a mansion. It was a renovated A-frame in a quiet town called Mystic, an hour away from Greenwich and a lifetime away from the woman I used to be. It had 2 bedrooms, a large fenced yard, and 0 security cameras. I took a sip of coffee, inhaling the salt air. My phone buzzed on the railing. It was a text from my lawyer. Mr. Henderson, judgment finalized. M. Sterling sentenced to 8 years. L. Sterling sentenced to 3 years for conspiracy and fraud. Restitution order granted. I looked at the words. 8 years. It seemed like a long time, and yet not long enough. Mark would be 40 when he got out. He would still be charming. He would still be handsome. He would probably find another woman to manipulate, another fortune to hunt. But that was not my problem anymore. Hannah. A voice called from the beach below. I looked down. A group of volunteers in neon orange t-shirts were walking a pack of dogs along the surf. Leading them was a young woman named Chloe, a college student I had hired to help manage the foundation. Benji found a crab, Chloe yelled, laughing. I smiled. Down on the sand. Benji. now a full-grown golden retriever, majestic and goofy, was barking at a small rock, his tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. I walked down the wooden stairs to the beach. "Good boy, Benji," I said, crouching down to ruffle his ears. He abandoned the crab and tackled me, licking my face with sandy enthusiasm. I had used the settlement money and a portion of my trust to start the Second Chance Sanctuary. We specialized in rehabilitating pets from domestic violence situations. It turns out, abusers often hurt animals to control their victims. I knew that playbook intimately. Every day, I met women who were where I had been, scared, doubting their sanity, clutching a cat or a dog as their only lifeline. And every day, I told them, "You are not crazy. You are just in a cage, and we have the key." It was fulfilling work, but it was hard. I sat on a piece of driftwood, watching the dogs play. People love a happy ending. They want to hear that I met a nice man, that I got remarried, that I had the baby I always wanted. But life is not a movie. I am single. I date occasionally. But the moment a man asks where I am going, or why I did not answer a text immediately, I feel a cold shudder slam down over my heart. I do not know if I will ever fully trust again. The scars of gaslighting are invisible, but they itch when it rains. As for the baby, Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu, I touched my stomach. I had gone to a fertility specialist last month, just to check. The stress of the last year had taken a toll. My hormone levels were low. The doctor said conception would be difficult, perhaps impossible without aggressive intervention. Mark had taken that from me too. His delay, his games, the stress he induced, it had run out my clock. I watched Benji chasing a seagull, his golden coat flashing in the sun. I did not have a child, but I had this peace. I had a purpose. I had a creature who loved me not for my money, but because I was the one who filled his bowl. Inner monologue. I used to think my value lay in what I could produce. A baby, a perfect home, a happy husband. I was wrong. My value is in what I can survive. I stood up and brushed the sand off my jeans. "Come on, Benji," I called out. "Time to go home." He bounded over to me, panting, his eyes bright. We walked back up the stairs together. I was not the girl who forgot to lock the gate anymore. I was the woman who built the fence. And as I closed the door to my small, imperfect house, I did not check the lock 3 times. I checked it once,